or if you're transitioning from maybe work or from family or community space, just take a moment to be aware of your body, to take in all your senses, try to smell something, try to see something, try to hear something. This helps us integrate into our body. And as we do so, I want to begin with honoring the ancestors of the lands that you're on, wherever lands you may be, that we honor those ancestors and we recognize them. And that in our honoring, we also think of ways that we can be in solidarity with different actions and movements around sovereignty. So to those ancestors first, we honor them and we welcome them into these spaces. Next, I'd like to welcome all of your ancestors, those amazing, powerful energies and spirits and guides that are part of you, that are with you. They are in every throbbing beat of that heart that is so precious, that runs through your veins and through your cells. Those amazing ancestors that give us intergenerational wisdom and strength and so much love. We want to honor them as well. I like to also honor my ancestors who I carry with me, who allow me to do the work that I'm doing. I want to recognize the different directions and in the different traditions, knowing that we don't have time to go through the ceremonies that we're accustomed to, but to recognize it from the different energies that are held within each of the directions. That we bring them into our center heart and we open our heart and keep our spirit lifted, our heart open as we share today, and we all learn from each other. I ask this from Creator, from Mother Earth, from my guides as we move forward. Así sea, Mateo.
Gracias, Sandra. And I will also say a prayer, which is the prayer that was in my book, and just dedicated to all of us on this path of reconnecting, remembering our ancestral medicine. Beloved Creator, Mother Earth, Don Unseen, ancestors, please help all people who seek remember their ancestral medicine ways, so that we may care for our bodies, hearts, minds, spirits, families, communities, animals, plants, water, air, soil, all life, all beings. As we remember, may we understand and accept our sacred responsibility to our ancestors, to Don Unseen, to future generations. Ometeld. So we will start with our panel conversation. And if you came in after we announced it, you're welcome to introduce yourselves in the chat, where you are, maybe the name of the land you're on if you know the indigenous territory. It's good to see a lot of familiar faces, or I guess not faces, but icons, names, familiar names. So, like I said, we had this panel just to answer some questions, and we are missing two panelists. We're not sure. Well, one is trying to get on, and the other, Brenda, I'm not sure. She confirmed. Hopefully she'll show up. We'll keep looking for her. And Marcela, what's the status with Ellie?
When she had the ID and the way to come in, but I don't know if she did it or not. And I also gave her the phone number, but I don't know where she is now because I tried to. Yeah.
So we'll work with what we have. That's curanderismo, right? Resilience and adaptability. Okay. Still have three great people. And maybe
as long as we have water, we can do a limpia.
Yeah, we'll invite others to share as well. So I'll start with pulling up the questions that came up last time. And let's see. It's on a different screen.
That I don't know. I feel I need to do little beats in the drum. Is this okay when you're looking for the questions?
No, I have them right here, but if you want to beat the drum, you can.
I want to invite also to align us to the rhythm of the Mother Earth and to connect our own heartbeat to her. She is the beautiful mother that holds all of us with so much generosity and love. And to all of the energies of the four directions and the elements to help us to connect with respect, with gentleness, with loving opening to all of the different perspectives and bring the best to this conversation and to this moment. May the beauty of our hearts connect to each other and create this beautiful circle for tonight. Adios.
Gracias, Marcela. Maybe that will bring the lost panelists to our Zoom. And I forgot we have to introduce ourselves before we start just jumping into questions. So I'll start. My name is Atava Garcia Swiecicki. My ancestry is Polish, Mexican, Dene, and Hungarian. I spent most of my adult life living in Ohlone territory in the Bay Area, Oakland primarily. But I'm a recent transplant to Albuquerque, New Mexico, which is unceded Tewa, Southern Tewa Pueblo territory. In Oakland, I started a school called Ancestral Apothecary, which I always like to say was guided by a prayer and a dream of creating a space where we could really incubate an incubation space for people who are looking for their ways to reconnect with ancestral medicines. So a place where elders would come and teach from different traditions and different cultural groups there would be classes that people could, find their way home, like Filipino herbal medicine, Celtic. We had some people from Nigeria, we had northern native people, curanderas. So it really was a beautiful vision, and I know I've recognized some people who passed through Ancestral Apothecary on the chat. So at that school, I created the class that was called the Curanderx Toolkit, and then became the Curanderx Toolkit, just as a class, because when I was in herbal school, I didn't feel like there was much cultural information. It was from a very white Eurocentric perspective. So I just wanted to create the kind of class I wish I had had, kind of really teaching herbal medicine, but from a frame informed from curanderismo and from my teachers. And I should name that some of my primary teachers in that lineage are Estela Roman and Doña Enriqueta Contreras. So out of that class came the book, which hopefully some of you have read or bought or gifted, which I worked on for the past 3 years during the pandemic. It was my grounding cord. And just really grateful for the reception it's had. And just really grateful that, I hope to see many, many more books like this, written by probably some of you who are on this call as panelists or as attendees. Like, we definitely need more BIPOC herbal books, but just even talking about the path of healing. I could go on a whole critique of that, but that's not what this is for, like the self-help community and all of that. I believe in self-help, but I don't think it should be at a high price, or self-care, right? It shouldn't be at a high price and inaccessible. So anyways, I'm really grateful that you're all here, and thank you, Marcela and Sandra. I'll let you both introduce yourselves, but I'll just say they're here because they're also two of the curanderas featured in the book. And when I was writing, I really wanted to get across that, that curanderismo, at least in the Bay Area, as I lived it for the past 20 years, was really a movement. It's a community movement of many people having many hands in different communities, and that we really operated a lot as a circle, you know, a lot of cross-pollination, a lot of collaboration. And so I really wanted to include the stories and the medicina of, you know, these 13 individuals who are very near and dear to my heart and played important roles in my life. So that was really amazing. And I will say, when I interviewed each of you, it was so amazing because I got to learn things about my close friends that I had never known, because you often don't sit and just say, tell me about your whole life, right? So it was beautiful. So with that, I can introduce, I'm going to put us in gallery. I'll introduce Marcela. Do you want to introduce yourself, and then Sandra?
Sandra is our elder, so I will give her.
Oh, and I think Ellie just got in, so.
Well, if Ellie gets here, she goes first because she's the oldest of the four of us. So, gracias, Marcela. Only a year or two older. So, apenitas. I think we're all about the same age. So, thank you, Atava, for this opportunity to share. This is, I think, work for all of us from our corazones. Briefly, I'm Sandra Pacheco. I was born in Los Angeles, but the majority of my life I've been in Carquina, Lonely Land, up in the northern parts of California. My practice comes directly from my grandmother, who was an indigenous woman, detribalized, and it's how I identify as Chicana Mexicana, indigenous but detribalized. And that means basically that I know I'm from indigenous lineages by the practices that my grandmother engaged in and were part of the everyday. She was the woman you went to for the hierbas and the remedios, and she, long before Dr. Raza, used to always say, oh, she knew about nopal and how to use it for diabetes. That's my earliest lineage. And then thereafter, as many of us who returned to ancestral medicine, I found myself in Atava's class practically begging to get in after I'd gone through a traumatic experience. And that's where I met my querida Marcela. And we all connected and formed Curanderx Sin Fronteras, which is a mobile healing clinic, if you will, which kind of is currently on a pause given the pandemic. We're trying to regroup. And so that's who I am in community. At my professional level, I'm a professor, semi-retired. I teach part-time at Berkeley in gender women's studies, and I teach indigenous and decolonial feminist ways of knowing, which is basically a variation of Atava's Curanderx Toolkit, expanded with more history and politics of identity, and also understanding who we are in relation to the lands of which we're on. There's also, as Atava said, the importance of understanding that the medicine is all around us, is accessible. And then that part connects to my other side, which teaches and works with therapists on critical decolonial psychology, so that we can bridge traditional medicine with the practices in mental health so that it's relevant and it's accessible as well. So that's my little offering.
Gracias, Sandra. Marce?
Thank you. My name is Marcela Sabin, and I'm born in Argentina, in South America, in a town that is named Córdoba. And I'm a mixed race, so I have ancestors from Europe, from Celtic, Basque, Saxon, and from different parts of like Italy, Germany, what is today Basque, from France, Celtic from Italy and Galicia. And then from far, far, far away, I connect to Kyrgyzstan, as the elder said. So sometimes it's hard to track everything, but also I have a native from Argentina that has been very covered, so it's very hard for me to find which tribe, but I'm guessing between Mapuches or Huichíes that, and my mother's side, there has been 7 generations living in Córdoba, and that is the land of Comechingones. I'm sorry for the word. So we don't eat anyone, but so that is like for me has been very interesting path in my life to navigate how to reconnect to my indigenous roots, and I feel that that has been what has been guiding me in my life, and has been a big gift, and that's kind of is unfolding and keep unfolding, and it's like a life path. I'm currently, so I met Atava like 20 years ago, and we were colleagues in the Indigenous Mind Program. And after that, we co-found a nonprofit organization that I'm still working with, that is Circle of Ancestors. And we brought elders from all over the world to bring their knowledge and wisdom to help others to reconnect with their own traditions, with their own indigenous roots. And everyone, wherever you're from, has indigenous roots when you go back. So that moment that when your people were connected to the earth tradition, that were having their ceremonies, their prayers, and their connection alive. So for different reasons, we get disconnected, and that is make us to go into all of this path of merging, and people married, and we have all this mix. But we carry sometimes all of that in us. And for me, it's very important to recognize where we are coming from. And then I have the beautiful gift to be, I was living in Mexico, and that connect me with the Mayan community. And then I has been given so many medicines, sometimes we don't look for, but they come to us for a reason. And I think that sometimes those things makes like a mentorship for us to keep looking for our own ways of doing how our people did this. So when you connect with something like the traditional healing, maybe from Mexico, and I was gifted with from Guatemala, from the Mayan, that helped us to go back to our own ways and our own, because this has been lost. So they give us some path to come back to reconnecting with the four elements: the fire, the water, the earth, and the air, that for me are the main ancestors, the main original ancestors, and to the original instructions. So with that, I would say I have a great grandmother that she was all into plants and healings and things that even was different from Mexico. She was the one who opened me up to the plantitas, to the love of the plants and the prayers, and all of that sense of spirituality with it in the life. So I think that most of us have someone in our life that brought that kind of love and memories from the ancient things, through the food, through the gardens, through the daily life. And that is a way that sometimes is so close to us, but it's hard to recognize. So I'm very thankful for my own ancestors in all the ways, from where all they're coming from, and to all of the ones who are present here today. May this conversation help us to keep growing and evolving. So thank you. And my work is about, I was doing limpias and curanderismo. Now I'm kind of reshaping my work, trying to bring more also the ceremonies, and I'm doing workshops to help people to connect with the well-being. I went through a long journey of health crisis, so that has been reshaping my practice. So I'm in that path now. So still doing the work and trying to see how this is the new manifestation. So thank you.
Gracias, Marce. And I believe Ellie is with us.
Yes.
If you unmute Abuela Ellie and you can introduce yourself.
I'm here.
Great, I can hear you. You made it.
Thank you. I made it. God, I feel like I've been running all over the country here. Well, I thank you for inviting me to participate in this important discussion. And yeah, so what my experience has been, in my family, I was separated from them a lot as I was growing up, because my mother worked as a cook in a bracero camp. So during the school year, I was sent away to live with other families. And I guess it was a pretty intense family experience to be isolated from our mother, and then to, you know, for our home to be empty several months of the year. And my brothers were a lot older, 10 years older, 8 years older. And so they kind of used to work as out in the fields during the summer when because my father wanted them to learn what it was like to work without an education. So they went on to college. I adjusted to just kind of being on the outskirts of the class, of the family. But something, as I heard Marcela's share, I realized that something took over in my life, that I had an insatiable thirst to find out what happened in our culture, first and foremost. And so my first quest was to go back to school and find out what happened. So I studied history, and I looked into Mexican history and US history, and I started finding out the truth of that, you know, how the indigenous cultures were presented in one light, and the truth was hidden from in education of what actually happened. So there was a lot of usurping of lands and culture. Anyway, just a lot of lies were superimposed on what the truth was. And the next steps that I started taking was to start writing my dreams down. And about a year into my experience of writing, because it was just a lot of gibberish at first, but after I started, an elder invited herself to let me, to have her join me, and I didn't know what the agenda was, but I said yes, of course. And our conversation was in Spanish, and then give another 5 years later, 10 years later, she appeared to me in person and showed me what feminine energy was. And then after that, there were just a series of dreams that showed me the paradigm that had been obscured with the coming of the other cultures. So there was something that just flashed through my mind that I needed to say, that it's passing. Anyway, with the passage of time, other instructions came, and I started working with people with life-threatening illness. I didn't know it at the time, but this was after I had had a dream that included my going back to school and studying. I didn't know what, but to find out the true paradigm that had been missing. To kind of shorten all the stuff that's coming through my mind right now. Well, I'm sort of, the training that the elder started taking me through was to be with people in sickness. And then I started guiding people in their death process, and sort of serving as a guide from this life into the other. And that happened several times in different ways with different people and different families. But then later on, much later, and they would show me things that I didn't know in my waking state, but they were related to the ancestors and the elders, that a group of elders that also showed up for me. So fast forward a little bit more, I met Atava, and it was through her that I started putting together the actual thread of my life and the connection to the ancestors and the connection to the elders, what they really meant and what they represented for me. And I'm in the process of learning that right now. I haven't had a chance to talk to Atava about that, but yeah, that's, I mean, this journey that has been a really windy road for me, but I've also been shown that we are the strands of connection with the elders, with the ancestors, have not been broken, and that's where Atava has come into my life. It's like I get to be the elder and she gets to be the teacher, and I'm fine with that. I am grateful for that. I'm really, her book has really helped me put into perspective a lot of what I was shown. And what I was shown was really disconnected from events, but they would show up at 10, 15 years of journal keeping and following through on what the ancestors told me to do. So thanks, Atava.
Yeah.
Your book is going places.
Thank you, Ellie. And I just want to, I want to give a shout out. Here's Ellie. She's featured in chapter 13. And you didn't say, Ellie, that you are the author of 2 books. Corn Woman Sings, A Medicine Woman's Dream Map, which I know for me, that was a really powerful book to discover. Someone from, writing about their, kind of Mexican dream traditions. And then your most recent book, A Dream Map to the Sixth Sun, which whenever I read that, I feel like you just channeled a big download from the ancestors. So thank you. I just wanted to acknowledge you. And also that you, as an elder, you're 78, 79.
Yeah, I'll be 79 in October.
Yeah, that you've lived through a lot of the significant shifts in the culture of curanderismo, and at least here in, colonized North America, from a time when it was very taboo and very hidden and even persecuted, to a relatively free and celebratory and accepting moment. But I always feel like your story is important for us to know, because things weren't always this accessible. Or
no, they weren't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just amazing that your book, the toolkit, is a doorway for going to be the doorway for a lot of people to say, hey, wait a minute. I've been eating dross and this is who my people are. This is our real food, our real connection to life and the multi-dimensions that our ancestors lived in.
Thank you. So I think we're going to shift to our questions, and I will read some of them, and then we'll open it up also to the folks who are present on this call or on this webinar. That's what it's called, a webinar. And not every one of us has to address each question. I know, Sandra, you said one of these you were really excited about. And so these came from the last time. And I could even put it in the chat too. I'm going to put it in the chat, and then also I'll read it out loud. Oops, I just did it to host and panelists.
So
Redo.
how much time you want to give to each question? I saw that. Questions.
Well, ideally we're ending in about a half an hour, so maybe
for each of us to take time to answer, to have an idea.
yeah, I'll keep an eye on time, but it'd be good to open up to some of the questions of people who are actually present. Maybe the person who wrote this question, it was anonymous, so I don't know if they're back. But question 1, as I'm listening, I'm wondering, how do we move forward in a good way with others, especially those who are devoted to Christian traditions, who still regard curanderismo as brujeria and such? I ask this most specifically in regards to fellow folks of color who will use remedios such as cannabis and alcohol for dolores en el cuerpo. To me, it's contradictory, yet in my path, I'm committed to not be judgmental or be in conflict. Yet I want to be able to speak in an empowered manner and be part of dissolving what no longer serves me and all of us, and not feeling like I'm staying quiet. So, either Sandra, any of the panelists want to? Sandra, you look ready.
That's the one that I was, because the majority of the persons I serve are of Christian, specifically Catholic tradition. And I was fortunate to be raised by radical feminist nuns who were far from judgmental, and their teachings are the teachings I bring into my practice. Although I'm no longer a practicing Catholic, the cultural elements are still there, and I still understand the teachings in a way that helps me bridge when I do a limpia or I'm supporting someone on their healing. And part of it is for me, and I'll just, anything I say is what I've done, and it's by no means a suggestion of what anyone else should do. But part of it is sharing my own story, and that's the stories of my nuns who do not see it as brujeria, and of my teachers, which I was remiss in sharing my teachers from Oaxaca. I live half of the year in Oaxaca. My teachers there with include Doña Enriqueta Contreras, but my teachers in Teotitlán del Valle are extremely Catholic. And so part of it is presenting ways of being and knowing that counter those narratives so that doesn't become the single narrative that dominates. And for me, because my grandmother, she had faith that was strong, but she didn't have, she wasn't interested in patriarchy or being part of the church. And the nuns that I was exposed to were very radical feminists. Basically, we were taught, including the Jesuit, the priests, that everything comes from divine, from God, from Creator. So these medicines and these practices they were given to us. Everything we would need in this world was given to us by God, divine being, Creator, however is most comfortable for the person. So that when folks come to me about it's brujeria, and I'll say, well, how can you say that about a gift of plant medicine, of elements, of water, of everything that was given to us by Dios to take care of us using their language? And so most of the people that I work with, they actually will seek out curanderismo, and they don't see it as brujeria. And there are folks who have had this as a way of being in the world, and also they're using their spirit guides, which are often santos, So the brujeria tends to be a smaller group that I'm seeing. And so part of what I try to do is not allow for too much energy to be placed on those that see it as brujeria, but maintain a narrative around the divine gifts that we've been giving around plant medicine, around understanding that the plants are so powerful, not just ingested, but when we use them for limpias and how they pull the energy. And that there's so much wisdom that we still don't know about the plants, that there's thousands of bioactive components that our relatives have been using for since time immemorial. So that's usually the way I enter it in terms of anything around suggestion and brujeria.
Thank you, Sandra. Marce, because I know you have to leave us soon.
I think I'm going to stay. They say that they can record, so it's okay. Thank you, Sandra, for that. I have a similar experience when I was in Mexico, learning from the curanderas there. I was living in a small community, Escalazonot. That was my first experience with healers, no? And I realized that there is this kind of assimilation, no, that they has been adopting the Christianity because it's kind of like it's a way of, I don't know, to survive, I guess, for the communities, and also the practices is still alive. What I noticed when I was in Guatemala, that the was more like the evangelist that has been more aggressive towards the healers. And I think that's 2 years ago. I'm sorry, I don't remember the right year. In one of the communities in Guatemala, the evangelist burned one of the most recognized herbalists. And that's things, in those ends, I'm really concerned because it's kind of going back to the time of the Inquisition. And I would say that kind of mentality is the one that really makes all of our ancestors to be disconnected. Like when we have roots in Europe, they were indigenous people there. They have their practices, they have their healers. And also the word brujas came from brujas. And it's kind of like the healers in the area of the Galicia and all of that areas. So, and they were the healers. They were the ones who used the plants, the midwife, and all of that was kind of sweep through the presence of the Inquisition, no? And the main thing that they did is also to bring this poison into the communities, like this thing that if I say that, oh, Atava is a bruja and I can get her land. So they put all of these interests and things that they were so sick and makes people to break that community and that belonging to each other. And I think that is the main thing that damage our ancestors, and that has been carried as a trauma to the future. So going back to that, I was praying with this question, and things that came to me is like to be true to yourself. No, when we're walking this path, I think that there is this kind of dance to, if I practice something that I pray for and I put the best ethical ways and I'm present with the spirit and walking in all of that, how I can stand up in my truth without seeking the approval of the Christianity of the others, no? Sometimes I know that it's difficult, depends if how is your context or your family, of your community. But I'm also thinking why it is important, this kind of Christian view, no? I would say to that person, why this approval or disapproval is important for you. And regarding if it's the marijuana or what kind of medicine, I think that plants for me are elders and they come to teach to us. And know every plant is for us, or have times in our life. And I think it's very important to know why you are taking something, or why you are working with some plants, and knowing your relation with that spirit, because they are alive. It's not only like a media, no, it's like the plants are allies, they are elders, they have a spirit. So they also can guide you as you work with them in how to put them into the world. And I believe in the spiritual part of this path very strongly. And it's a lot of work, but also I think it's a beautiful guidance that lives in the path, in our relationship with the medicines. Um, in my experience, like growing the root, growing the grandmother plants or the flowers, and it's kind of such a sacred relationship that you start to develop. And and so when you use those medicines, they are coming with so much, I don't know, love and power and all of the things that you put in them, and they also guide us. So that is one of the things that came to me, and the other is, um, we never know how the spirit work. So sometimes we have to be open in terms of, you say that how not to judge, no? So sometimes it's very hard because it's easy, no, to to kind of go into that place. But I think I has been learning to be more open and curious about why the person is making those statements, and maybe asking, and I don't need to convince the other person, but I can listen, and I can offer like a space for expression, and also gave us some information about where the other person is at. And everyone is free to choose if that is the medicine for them or not. So if someone feels that it's a brujeria, or a brujeria means something bad for them, maybe they need another kind of medicine. So I don't know if this gives some more information or knowledge, or but coming from my humble experience. So thank you.
Gracias, Marce. We have a couple other questions in the chat, but Ellie, do you want to say anything to this question before we move to the next?
Yeah, I would. The Queen Isabella was very interested in the spirit, in the salvation of the people. And there were a lot of priests that came from Catholicism into the new, what they called the New World, but was really very established. And there was a lot of misinformation that went back and forth across the ocean. And some of it took root that the indigenous people were worshiping the devil. That was a big thing. But it was during the time that Europe was also in an upheaval of destroying the power that women's healing had over the culture. They had a position of power that the male fabric of the cultures were taking over. And there was a lot of killing of women who were thought to be witches, not related to what was here, but that Europe had its own stuff that it was working with. And so then they come here and they see people working with spirit and creativity and healing and design and weather, and just, they were really frightened by it. And that was when they started superimposing all the beliefs that people had about witchcraft in Europe. And there was one Jesuit priest, I think he was a Jesuit, that said, wait a minute, we are destroying everything here in this place, and we are destroying it as though it's of the devil, and it is vibrant and worth saving. And so he took it upon himself to start interviewing people before it was too late to lose the thread of the original culture. So there's a lot of confusion. There's still a lot of confusion. But, you know, it's up to us to plummet the depths and find out for ourselves who we are, and to be in relationship with the plantas, to be in relationship with the ancestors, to be in relationship with the elements. Those are vital and real. Our relationship with the trees and the water and the fire, all of that, stone people, I can't think of the word right now, but it's really important for us to lay aside our fears and to delve into the reality of life and spirit and healing and creativity. It's just a really broad spectrum of experiences that are waiting for us.
Thank you, Ellie. I'm going to look at some of the questions in the chat, because there have been several. Sandra, thank you for answering some of them. And the first one was from Anele, if I'm pronouncing your name right. And they say, I have a question. I'm studying herbalism and astroherbalism. I'm drawn to mother medicine and interested in incorporating my Taino lost culture into this mix. How do I incorporate my cultura into a very Western form of herbalism? Also, if I practice this way, can I call myself a Curanderx? Great question. I could talk about the herbalism part, because I mean that's basically my path. I'm trained as a clinical herbalist, and it often gets called Western herbalist, and that's problematic, the descriptive term Western. But, I think the more any of us connects to and engages with our ancestral medicine, knowing the plants, if there's plants that you can be in relationship with, it will just start to blend with whatever form of herbalism you are already practicing. Because in traditional cultures, certainly in curanderismo, there wasn't a separation between prayer and ceremony and healing and medicine. So I would just say, learn, seek out elders, seek out teachers, and you'll find the way. It's different for everybody. And I've been in this position as a teacher of so many to see how everyone brings their own flavor and their own ancestral medicine to your practice. I mean, it's in you already. So if I were enrolled at an herb school today, I would challenge the teachers or administration to say, hey, bring in like more BIPOC teachers, bring in, teach us something besides phytochemistry and science, right? So that's my answer to that question. I don't know if anyone wants to add to that.
And something, Atava, that I know I always get really a little uncomfortable with. I know you referred to me as a Curandex, but it's not a label I'll ever apply to myself. I'll never refer to myself as a curandera or Curanderx. If others do it, I understand it's okay, but for me, I imagine standing next to Doña Queta and being referred to that way and feeling that I really have not reached the number of years and practice that would suggest such a title. You know, and it's one of the conversations that I've had when I teach an intro, kind of like a 101 curanderismo. I always differentiate between there's the practice of curanderismo, which we all have access to, which is a way of life, a way of being in the world. There's a lowercase c curandera, and that's like my grandmother, who she had such wisdom around the medicine, and people would go to her. And then the capital C curandera, like Doña Queta, where their whole life is committed to doing this work. They're channeling in a very intentional way, and they're always living this practice every day. So I know folks are wondering, like, what is about this journey and how to get on it? And it's not looking at ever at the end point of when am I a curandera, but to me, it's a commitment of a way of living and being in the world.
I want to add a little bit to that. Thank you, Sandra. I share what Sandra just said, and I remember when I was with the curanderas and the healers in Mexico and Guatemala, and asked them. It's like, and also my teacher from the Maya fire ceremonies. It's not a teacher; it's an initiation, I would say. It's not something that you learn like in a school and you have a degree and you go out with your title and you're ready to practice. What he says, like, you will know that you're a healer when people show up into your door and you never call them. And then people show up and they will show you your function. It's not you who define that. So I for many years, I never put any announcement on anything. And people show up. I don't know how they contact me, how they found me. But I also, as they show up, I show up for them. And I think that is they gave us life because they are looking for us in our medicine. And also when we give that back, we make that alive. So it's for me, it's not I think that to go to school and to learn all of these tools is a personal path to start to recognize these things that, because we don't have our elders here with us, the communities in the old ways that they grow up is not existent anymore. So we need these places that foster that community of remembrance and to point us in some directions that help us to go back and look for the elders or our connection to the land, to our ancestors, and check in about what ceremonies they have, how they connect with what plants were living in the land of my people, or what kind of ceremonies they have, what kind of medicines they did. So all of that, I think is like the classes are a way to mentorship, to foster a roadmap for you to reconnect. And that is a personal decision, no? That if you want to pursue that deepness and look for your ancestral connection, no? And your ancestral medicine. And I think that knowing the school of Atava and my experience attending the classes always has been the direction, no? That this is a beautiful toolkit to start your own path. And sometimes your path can bring you to many different places. So also is be open about what is your medicine and what is your path in this world and time too. Hi, Brenda.
Hi, my apologies. Had a little bit of a family emergency, which is all settled now, but I apologize for not being here earlier.
Oh, no, I'm glad you're okay. I figured something came up. So just to catch you up, someone asked, it was a two-part question, but one is, the gist of it was, when can you call yourself a curandera, curanderx, or if you can? And I think it's a very personal answer. And when I interviewed many people in the book, many of them didn't use that label. I personally could just call myself an herbalist. And at the same time, I know I'm aware that if our generation don't claim that name, then what's left for the people, who will be, we are the elders or becoming the elders. So it's complex. I like Curanderx because it has like the X, and it just feels more modern, so that we're not the same as like Doña Enriqueta. But we need a name. Maybe there's a new name for those of us who are committed to walking with the medicine and engage with it, with ourselves and other people as a way of life. So I don't know if Brenda or Ellie want to say anything to this.
Well, I've said a lot. Brenda, do you want to go ahead first?
Well, I definitely have heard from many elders similar things that have been shared when I jumped on, because I was listening even before you put me on the panelist thing. But yeah, this care of the capitalist thing of like claiming something too early. And I really appreciated your share about, I think elders saying like, you can call yourself that when people start coming to you, start seeking you out. And, it's an interesting thing, because I think people started calling me curandera before I did. And that made me feel capable of using that title later, once I felt like the community had seen me that way. So that felt important. And then also, I think you were alluding to this as well too, in some of your earlier responses. Like, it's interesting because Spirit told me to put up a website years ago, but I don't really take care of it, and I don't advertise, and I don't do a lot of that stuff because I feel like Spirit leads who's supposed to come to me. So I, there's care in like the language you use, but also why are you using the language, right? It's one thing if my community calls me that and I accept that with grace, versus like I'm claiming this title and I'm going to market and I'm going to drive customers. Like I'm always getting emails from marketing people around like, yo, you're not ranking high on these things and we can help you get more traffic. And it's like, I actually don't want that. I want everything to happen in a Spirit-led way. And I don't need more people coming to me. I can barely keep up with responding to the people that reach out to me. So, but I do prefer that things come through community. A lot of referrals are through friends like Atava. And that feels right to me, so there's what you call yourself. And then there's also how you hold it, right? Like, what is the goal? Is it to be of service and community and to be, I always tell people, I'm not healing you. I'm facilitating and holding space. And I'm in partnership with the non-human world, with your ancestors, with my ancestors, your higher self, my higher self. I'm facilitating and holding space for the things you're releasing, the things you're calling in. And so also that attachment to the title, being careful that you don't, your ego is not getting in the way there of wanting that title because you want to look powerful. It's a very humble and service oriented, and I feel like we've had really good elders, all of us, that practiced that, demonstrated that for us. So yeah, just tapping into your heart and asking yourself which label do you have and why are you taking that label, versus being in service.
Yeah, thank you, Brenda. I know when I interviewed several of you in the book, folks like, I'm thinking of Trudy Robles, who just grew up in a very traditional community. There wasn't that name curandera. It was just like La Señora that cures susto, or this person who could give a massage. It was just, they were known by their action. So Ellie, do you want to add to this before we move to the next question? And just in terms of time check, we started a little late, so I think we'll go a little bit longer, maybe 10, 15 minutes longer, just to get to at least one more question. Go for it, Ellie.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, we're dealing with colonization, and whatever we can do to reclaim who we are without this overlay of beliefs and traditions that don't belong to us, and reclaim our true nature. That's really important to me. That's, as I don't call myself a curandera either. I don't have, it's like, oh, a curandera, wow, that's a big deal. It's like, it has a certain mystique about it, but I know that as we continue on this path of exploration and bringing back traditions, this term is going to be keep redefining itself as time passes. And I know that I personally was identified as a troublemaker within the educational system because I was fighting to bring back something that was ancient for me that I had no name for. And we are in the process of revitalizing our culture, revitalizing our true nature, of getting in touch with the spirit of the rock and the ocean and fire and trees and ancestors. So, it's going to take time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellie. I'm going to go to Natalie's question, and I think it's in the chat. I'm going to just read the second part. They're talking about, I would love to get back to my ancestral knowledge of herbalism, but can't help but feel as though I am extracting from a very particular culture that is not mine. My question is, if this is guilt I have in my head, how can I release the guilt or story? I'm telling myself this knowledge isn't for me because these aren't my ancestral lands or my particular ancestral knowledge. That's a great question.
Yeah, I'm
Thank
so
you for
glad you
asking.
read that one because it's been the path for so many of us.
You want to say something to it, Sandra?
Well, and I saw the first part because she'll be in Oaxaca, and feel free to, I'll put my contact. I live half of the year in Oaxaca. And one of the things that's so important is being very transparent. I make it very clear that even though my teachers are all Zapotec, I am not Zapotec. But at the same time, when I've learned about the practice of curanderismo throughout Mexico, it is so similar. And, it's no different than in a way, the foods with its distinctive regional sazon or takes on it based on the local rituals and herbs and plants. And so we're reclaiming our medicine, and I like what we use in Chicana feminist theory. We talk about being detribalized. And so that we know we come from indigenous, and Doña Cata says, well, who do you want to claim, the colonizer or your indigenous ancestry? And it doesn't mean that we want to ever dismiss or disregard it, but in terms of a way of being in the world, we don't ever want to put down that which we all come from, because those of us from Mexico, we know that we all have, unless we have our lineage saying it's purely indigenous, we know we come from European descent as well. But in the process, part of that guilt of us not wanting to claim it is to push aside the colonial voice that says that we have to be a certain way in the world. And instead, as Doña Cata says, you want to claim your indigenous side. And we also have to know that we do so in a good way. And we do so with discipline, and we do so with spirit and with respect. And we do so with the understanding that it's not just extracting and taking, but it's a reciprocal relationship with your teachers. So I maintain very close reciprocal relationships with all my teachers in Oaxaca. And it's aquí para servir a sus órdenes. So I'm constantly in service to all my teachers, and that it's an ongoing relationship that I'll be tending. And so it's not just me going in a very colonial way to extract information, but rather to be in community. So I think part of what happens is that within the Western way of being and like research, when we go to learn something, it does feel like we're taking. Research has been one of, Linda Tuho Weissmith in her decolonial methodologies talks about that research is an ugly word for indigenous people. because of the whole history of going in and the violence of it and extracting. And so my sense is that some of our discomfort comes from even asking questions, because we know culturally it could be disrespectful. So, how do you approach elders? So I'm happy to follow up with this one, because I know you're going to be in Oaxaca, and I'm happy actually to even introduce you to some of my teachers, because I'll be there depending if we're there at the same time. But it's definitely, for me, it's learning how to be, and that was something I learned with an Indigenous community, not to know, but learning to be, and to be in community, and trusting then that you'll learn what you need to learn. And that shift is a whole energy of feeling like I'm taking something. The only thing that differs, like when I look at my grandmother, her limpias were very much like Doña Quietas, but my grandmother is from a different part of Mexico. But her approach to limpias were very much like Doña Quieta, total and different indigenous lineages. So again, we learned that we're working with elements, we're working with plants, we're working with spirit. As Brenda shared, we're the vessels, we're channeling. So all of these are consistent across the different traditions.
Gracias, Sandra. Does anyone else? Marcela?
Yeah, I'd like, can I add one more thing?
I was going to talk, Ellie, but if you want to go on.
Oh, no, go ahead.
And I let you talk, because it's kind of,
Okay.
it was
Okay.
said.
All right. So here,
Okay.
okay, I'm not sure. Did you say go ahead, or did you say wait?
You can let me go, so because it's connected with what Sandra said, and I don't want to look.
Okay. Go ahead.
If it's okay with you, if it's a short part, that I felt guilty so many times because I'm Latina. I'm not white from this culture, but I have white skin, and I'm not Mexican. So it's a very complicated way for me to be in this community, and has been so hard so many times. And the other part is like the medicine came to me in many ways I didn't look at, but it's like a spirit put me in those paths. And I was so kind of, no, I'm not Mayan. And that's kind of the other say, well, Mamita, you cannot choose. You has been chosen. It's kind of things that spirit works in ways that is not the way of our also Western mind in some ways. So put categories, put boxes, put kind of labels, and I don't know, it's kind of how you align yourself to spirit. And I don't want to minimize all of the charge that all of these things have in our communities about racial discrimination, the no empowerment of our medicine, and all of that. I don't want to minimize with this comment any of that, because it's real also. But also in my path, I will say, I want to share this part that maybe is helpful for others, that when I was led to do the initiation, to do the fire ceremonies, I remember I have that message that came through spirit, and I say, why? I don't get it. I'm not Maya. So I hold that prayer for many months until it's keep coming. And so I talk to the person, and I realized that person has been lighting the fire in the land of my ancestors, praying for people to remember to light the fire. So my people lost the ways. So maybe lighting the fire for the people who still having that sacred key to access that medicine is a way that at some point I will be able to remember and bring back my own ceremonies. That's my prayer. I'm still in that process. Yeah. I think it's good to recognize who you are and how you are coming to that place. Honor who you are completely, with all welcome all of you, and also be humble and be respectful. And I think that is the other part. Is like it's very different when you go with the preset mind of I'm going to take this, I'm going to do this, than when you are called to do that. I would say if it's people from Oaxaca, is going to give you that open door to go back to your people and knowing how to relate to plants or how to do medicine, how people, it's kind of change your cosmovision, no? And when I was with the Mayan, it's kind of, I was having these kind of little things to see and then start to expand and I say, oh, wow. It's like when you cook, you have your nahuales and everything connected to that. Or when you weave, it's about also your story is in your huipiles. And it's like you start to realize that it's embedded in everything. And that put me in that perspective of how this will be embedded in my life and how I can carry the same sacredness to all of this that has been given to it's not to me, I'm kind of an instrument to service. So I don't want to say I own anything. It's like you put yourself in service for what you open up to carry, no? And I would say at the end, if you see all of the different traditions, I remember that our elders were telling us, like, knowing how to introduce yourself, knowing your people, knowing is like a way to, it's a way that they open doors, no? And how you, at the end, is like how you recover your indigenous mind. And from that perspective, I feel that there are other ways to learn and research, like the dreams, the synchronicities, the relationship with things, the spirit that you bring. So it's not the same way that you research as you are part outside. No, I would say that is the same way that you learn this path. It's like how you are into that unfolding path of be in service, I would say. So that's what I would like to add. Thank you. And at the end, there are the same original instructions for everyone. So I would say that be in love with everything, walk with respect, with kindness and gentleness. And so you can look into that and you can recognize that it's in every culture, in every indigenous original culture. So thank you.
Gracias, Marce. Maybe Abuela Eli and then Brenda, and then we'll wrap it up.
Okay, I'll be short. Wow, this is a really electrical subject for me. When I started, I was in my early 30s when I started keeping my dream journals, and I started seeing the ancestors, and they started telling me what I needed to be doing and what they wanted me to be doing. And, you know, it was a completely different way of being in life. And I started working with people in death and dying a few years later. Maybe it was 4 or 5 years later, 3 or 4 years later, that I started working with people going through their transition. And I didn't know that there, you know, it was all so new. But for me to start seeing death and knowing when someone was going to be passing, helping them be with the family, kind of identifying, okay, you know, the person's going to be passing on, but just holding the space of that was very new for me. And I didn't have a name for it, but there was a guy from New York, not Caucasian, you know, I won't describe who he was, but he wasn't Latino, he wasn't Native, he was European background. He was charging for teaching what I was learning. You know, it was like he was getting all the glory and the money and the physical bangles or whatever you want to call it. But there was something vital that was happening for me that I had no name for. And that was when I was in my 30s. I am now near knocking at the door of 80. Next year, I'll be knocking at the door at 80. And if I hadn't listened to the ancestors, I would not be who I am today. And I wouldn't have, my heart would have closed down without listening to this path that's native to us, that's within us. It's vital, it's vibrant. Nobody has the one and only key. It's an experience that we are charged with to bring into this world. And what we call ourselves, you know, I don't know, for the longest time I used to call myself a psychologist, but a lot of people would have said, you're no psychologist, you're something else, but whatever it is, you're not a psychologist. So that's my 20 cents worth.
Gracias, Abuela Ellie. Brenda, do you have like to take us home with some wisdom?
Yeah, I definitely, you know, I know everybody's path is so individual. I know that for me, I was guided by my Indigenous grandmother from the other side around teachers. And she said, every time a teacher comes on your path, check in with me. Not that they're good or bad people, just that they may not be meant to be your teachers. So that, following that ancestral guidance, as Ellie was saying, was really important on my camino for sure. The other thing that's interesting about that is Grandma guided me first to the Festival of Traditional Medicine in Mexico. And my family's from Nicaragua. And I think some of that is because colonization happened differently in different places. And I think she wanted me to learn from grandmothers and grandfathers who had unbroken line, and where it might be safer to learn too. And she said, you know, it's very similar to what we practiced, you know. But I think the other piece is that I've also heard elders say, you know, they're always looking for the people who come to ceremony and who are humble and who are service. And when they see that, my friend Beto said that, one of the elders who said that would say, like, when someone comes in that way of humility and service and bringing a plate of food to the elders and how can I help, then they're like, that person's ready to learn. And certainly across history, people were adopted into tribes and taught medicine. I know folks who are European American who were initiated by Native elders in pipe ceremony because they saw that they would carry it in a humble and a good way. So this cross-pollination of medicine has happened for thousands of years, and the elders generally, when they're good elders, don't pass it on unless they know that you're carrying it in an indigenous way. So I think it's not that I don't think appropriation happens, but I don't think it's an automatic, anybody of this color shouldn't ever do X, Y, Z. It really is how you're showing up. Like the elders are always looking for people who come to be of service, who are coming with some humility. If someone's coming in and say, I want to take this, I want this, teach me, I want you to teach me, if they're being pushy, then they're not ready to be taught because they're not coming in a humble and good way. So I think it really is looking at your heart and your orientation is really, really important. And as you go down that path, honoring where it comes from, honoring your teachers, never pretending like you own it. And then using that as a gateway, as an opening to talk to your ancestors. I want to know about the medicine of my ancestors too. I'm not just learning this lineage. I want more connection to you. I want you to teach me what you worked with. And so allowing that cosmovision that Marcela talked about, being indoctrinated and brought into a world where we're in relationship to everything, letting that open you up to talk to your ancestors and ask, because every family line has medicine. If you go far back enough, every lineage was indigenous to place and connected with the land and ancestors and the plants at one time. And so being humble, giving thanks and acknowledging your teachers, being in service, and then also taking that care to say, I also want to learn from those of my lineage where possible, is really important.
Gracias, Brenda. The one thing I'll add, and this has really been a lot of my path, is we can build a direct relationship with a plant. Like that is between me and the plants I grow. And that's not appropriation if I'm building this relationship, or you build a relationship with the tree. I'm looking at one outside my window, or waking up and watching the sunrise and greeting the sun. Like, I think that is available to all human beings, you know, what Mother Earth Donutsing gives us. I mean, and then all cultures have certain names and certain practices, but at the end of the day, we have a right to have relationship with medicine that has no borders or boundaries or cultures, you know, just, and this is an assignment I give to everybody. It's just, you want to learn medicine, like grow a plant from seed and then grow it, nurture it, harvest it, make it into medicine, just, and let the plants teach you. You know, and I think this is a really good question, because there is a lot of complexities and a lot of issues with cultural appropriation. But I know for myself, I also follow the lead of my maestras, who really had an open heart to share with, it's kind of like what Brenda said, with those who just came with humility and, you know, to be of service. So it's not black and white, but, and I think just trust in your gut. And I think this is part of why I like these conversations. And I really envision having, you know, a council or community that we can just hold each other accountable. You know, if you see one person and they're at the top and they're the, you know, best healer and no one else is in circle with them, like I would run away, right? Because that's driven by ego and not by service. One of my first mentors said, you know, you can tell the real medicine people because they're like very quiet, very humble. And I remember my first trip to Mexico meeting elders who were like that, you know, just not tooting their own horns, just doing their work. So yes, it is past time. I know over here in Mountain Time, it's way past dinner time. So I just want to thank.
Atava, that is thanks to you, because you created the ceremony with your book in some way of bringing this medicine to a bigger community. But that is not something that you wrote out of the spirit. It's a synthesis of so many years of working with the spirit, with your own ancestral medicine, and also to making room for weaving a lot of healers or seekers or curanderos from the community in this area, no? That can be a role model for other parts of the world to start to reclaim, to start to be curious about how I can reconnect to my indigenous mind and make changes from that. So thank you so much for your own spirit guide, all of your ancestors and all of your amazing medicine that you has been putting in this beautiful book, and all of the things that you bring to the world. So thank you.
Gracias, Marce.
Ditto to all of that and more. And, you know, I can't speak more highly than I mean, Atava has changed so many of our lives. For many of us on our return back to the medicine, we had it in our family somewhere, but she was the one that opened the doors for us to return in a more disciplined way. And so I am forever grateful to you, Atava, and also just knowing the impact you've had now on hundreds of people who have gone out and who are now teaching others and are holding their own classes. And I'm down in San Diego, and I just saw Berenice Dimas, who's also in the book, and she has her hood herbalism, and that's just taken off as well. And so it's like you're now generationally the abuela in terms of the teachers, because now your students have students.
Thank you.
Yes, deep bows of gratitude, Atava. I'm so grateful for you being in your medicine in the world, for sharing that medicine, for helping to reinstitute in the ways that Sandra was saying, like this, we got to get back to the 7 generations and it being passed down with integrity, with love, with generosity. And I see all the ways that you've done that. And I'm so grateful for your friendship, so grateful for this beautiful book that you created, this labor of love that you've shared with the world, and for gathering us here online. So thank you, thank you, thank you for all that you are and the way that you walk your path.
Thank you, Brenda. Ellie, would you like to close us out with a prayer? And I just invite people in the chat, if you want to say whatever, your reflections, we'll read them. Maybe do that before we start with Ellie, if anyone wants to add anything to the chat. I know, Ellie, you can't read the chat, but I'll let you know if anything interesting. Well, it's all interesting.
Okay.
So we will close. I'm going to I'll light some medicine over here. Oh, yes. So someone asked about a replay. We are actually live streaming right now on YouTube. So I'm going to put this in the chat. So it will be available. Oops, that was the wrong thing. It will be available as long as we have access to YouTube. Okay, thank you for that. Share the prayer book you opened ceremony with. Yeah, that was in my book. And that is page, now I probably lost it. I don't want to waste time. Oh, here it is. Nope, different prayer. It is in the book. My bookmark's not there anymore, so I don't know what page, but it's just the prayer for ancestral remembrance. It's kind of towards the beginning. So yes, watch the YouTube. We'll have more conversations, and yeah, thank you all for attending. And I know we went past the time we had said we have, and there's probably people on the East Coast. We can feel your energy. Really appreciate you and all of us as we just kind of have this collective moment of reflection and visioning. You know, something I've been doing a lot is visioning forward and thinking about what's the next, movement in this spiral of this. And I have some ideas. But Ellie, I will invite you now to, hold up the book again. Okay. Oh yeah, this is the Curanderx Toolkit. So there may be people on this call who don't even know about the book. I could put the link in the chat. Let me find that.
I got it.
Oh, you got it?
Yeah, I'm
Okay,
getting ready to
Sandra.
paste it right now, so you don't have to do it.
Thank you. Yes. So this whole conversation, if you join later, was inspired by the first book event we had online, Curanderx Toolkit. So thank you, Sandra. Good to always have a co-host.
Teamwork.
Okay, we're getting a lot of thanks in the chat. And Ellie, if you're still here, can you close us out with a prayer?
Okay. Our Creator, East, West, North, South, all our ancestors, all our relations, our teachers, our family. We give thanks for this opportunity to delve deeper into what it means to be a healer, what it means to be a human being at this time in the earth. And we rejoice in the mercy and kindness of all that is good. And powerful. that sustains us, that guides us, that permits a relationship to flourish with all elements. Let our hearts be open, abound in the earth, being weak, and holding tenderly teachings that are bursting forth through this beautiful book, through the beautiful people that contributed to it, that it may be a source of inspiration for hundreds and thousands that have been working to connect with the ancestors, with the traditions, with the vitality of the past, future. Bring it all forward into one glorious orb of light and energy and strength and power. May we all be instruments of peace and truth. And may we all continue to contribute to the wisdom, courage, the strength, the power of the ancestors, and to live our lives in vitality, love, and humility. And
Tatsukamati, Ellie. Thank you, Ellie and Marcela and Sandra and Brenda, for showing up for this Q&A, Curanderx Q&A. Maybe one of the first ever, I don't know, on Zoom and YouTube. Yeah, thank you all who's everyone who participated. Yeah, be well. And my Instagram is at Curanderx Toolkit. I don't know if anyone else has any way the panelists want to put any kind of info in the chat, but yeah, there'll be more of something. We'll see what we're guided to do, but it was good to have this one just dedicated to questions. So everyone have a beautiful night, rest well, nourish your
Good seeing you,
body.
Marce, Brenda, Abuela Eli, Atava,
thank
gracias
you
por
all.
everything.
Thank you.
Thank you for everything.
Thank you,
For your
everyone.
work.
It's a gift to hear
and
you.
everybody.
Sandra, Eli, and Brenda, and everyone.
Besos, abrazos.
I don't see you, but you create this container for tonight, so thank you.
Thank you for your beautiful questions. Good questions.
Okay, good night. I
Good
have the power
night.
to press the end button. Much love to you all.
I
Okay,
haven't seen some of you in so long, it's hard to leave now. Brenda, I haven't seen you since like 2016.
I know, it's been
Oh,
a minute.
wow.
Yeah, I think the last time I saw her, she gave me a preparatory limpia before I left for Standing Rock.
Wow.
I said, I need a limpia before I go to Standing Rock. And I said, I went to Brenda.
It was such a
Nice.
gift to spend time with you. Well, let's not make it that long. Let's have tea
Let's
soon.
not wait 6 years. Okay, cuídense.
Okay.
Adios. Adios.
Good night.